Well, I want to know where they put Romanov's trampoline after he was done jumping off it like that. Man, did he ever leave his feet?
Yes, I want hitting, I want checking, I want physicality, I want contact. In fact, I want more of it.
It can't change from game to game. It can't change from period to period. It can't change from preseason to regular season to playoffs. It has to be consistent across the board.
I love the game. That's why I care about a state.
You can't have it both ways. We always try and have it both ways.
Stick was on the ice one game, and it was just a train wreck waiting to happen, and boy, did it happen, and I want to see more.
For me, this is one of the super easy ones. Kicking, match penalty, suspension, done. Get it out of the game.
Hello, hockey humans of the world. How are you? This is Josh from Tough Call Podcast. I'm doing my first ever live solo show. So thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And what my system is, just to give you a little brief introduction for those of you that don't know me. A lot of people complain about the inconsistencies of the Department of Player Safety, that's for sure, and I was one of them, but not a lot of us have other ideas on how to do it better. So I invented my own system called Tough Call, and this is my something better. I take a look at plays, not even as if I was the current Department of Player Safety. I'm not trying to guess or predict what they will do or even say what they should do under the current system. I've developed my own system with my own standards, and I make the call based on what I would do in a league that I was running myself. So that's the way I look at it. So sometimes my standard looks like it's kind of crazy, of course, compared to real world, but this is what I would do under my own system, under my own standard, with a clearly laid out set of rules that the players already had a chance to understand. And so I use the current day NHL incidents from that, and I just kind of play what I would do under my guidelines. Usually the show's about a week. The episodes are about a week in between, but I think the last 7, so this one's going to cover basically the rest of March. We're going to get up to as close to current day as possible. Now I'm getting stuff. How people help me is I can't watch every single game, of course. I'm just one person, just one man. So I try and watch as much of hockey as I can, but I can't watch it all. So people send me clips or tag me in clips and say, hey, Tough Call, what did you think of this? Or, hey, what are your thoughts on that? Or did you happen to see the play from this game? And I'm getting a bunch from last night still coming in. People are tagging me in clips saying, did you see this? Did you see that? So I still have a lot of videos to get caught up on, of course, but we'll get you as close to current day as I possibly can. The segments I usually do to start out with is called the weekly fines and suspensions, or what I call my WTFs, because usually what the Department of Player Safety does makes me say WTF. So I call this the WTFs, or weekly total fines and suspensions. I take a look at what the actual Department of Player Safety did over the time period that I'm covering, and then I would say what I would have done and go over some of the ones they would have missed. So that's what I'm going to start it with right now. WTFs. And so over this period, I got to check my notes here. Over the period between March 8th to 28th, which is the period I'm covering, the NHL's actual Department of Player Safety issued a total of 3 fines and 4 suspensions. Over that same period, I would have issued 13 suspensions. So they had 7 incidents that they thought were worthy of supplemental discipline. I had almost doubled that at 13, and I didn't have any fines this time. I would have suspended everybody that was punished. Let's take a look at the first one. I covered this in my last episode, but it happened like literally the night we recorded, about 45 minutes before we recorded. So we did talk about it last episode, but I'm just going to reiterate. This is the Jake McCabe double cross check. There's one to DeBrusque, and there's one to Marchand. And you can see they fined him $5,000 for cross checking. And what I would have done is suspend him 14 games. And I know what you're thinking. Those are like, that's a horrible amount of games compared to what they gave. But I look at this, first of all, as 2 separate incidents. That's the main difference. is that this is two separate and distinct cross checks, both to the head. So I don't think you should just give a player a blanket fine for doing something that's so dangerous twice within seconds of each other. I mean, there's the first one, and then without even thinking, he just turns around and does it again. So that's two distinct incidents for me. And the other thing for me is cross check to the head is like that has nothing to do with making a hockey play. That's just complete danger. It's easily avoidable. There's no reason your stick should ever be that high. So a cross check to the head to me under my system is an automatic 6 to 10 games, automatic minimum 6 games. So for this first one, I would have given him 6 games. And for that second one, which is way after the play and more violent, I would have given him 8 games. So that's where I got my 14 games from. So when you first look at that, I know what it looks like, right? People say I'm crazy all the time. Are you mad? Like, do you understand how this works? Yeah, I do. I understand how it works in today's NHL, but I just don't think it is working in today's NHL, which is why we see so many cross checks to the head. $5,000 fines aren't cutting it. And because this is 2 distinct ones, that's why it's 14 games. So when you take a look at what I'm trying to do, it makes a little more sense once you take a closer look. So speaking of $5,000 fines for cross-checking, Charlie Coyle was also issued a $5,000 fine for cross-checking. This one was, I'm just loading the clip up here. It was in front of the net, and he's in a net battle. He's already cross-checking Bertuzzi repeatedly, and then he just drives him in the face as part of his net battle. And then he's surprised. He actually hits Bertuzzi. Like, what are you doing laying down? Like, he really gives it to him here when you really watch. Let me back that up here. But he gives it to him in the back twice, and then boom, right in the face. To me, that's, again, easily avoidable, completely unnecessary, isn't a hockey play. Why are you doing that in front of the net like that? So to me, if you can't defend without cross-checking to the back, I don't know why the rules change in front of the net. The rule book should be the same. If you cross-check somebody in the back in front of the net, it's just as much of a cross-check as it is anywhere else on the ice. To me, if you cross-check them in the head, again, that's under my system an automatic 6 games anyway. So this one here was pretty violent. The force kind of moves it up from the minimum of 6 games. So that's where I'm looking at it. So I gave him 8 games compared to the $5,000 for cross-checking that he actually got from the Department of Player Safety. What's the next one here? Let's take a look. So Evander Kane was fined $2,500 for unsportsmanlike conduct. Usually I put under what Tough Call would have done, but this is one of those rare ones. I didn't see it. I never saw a clip of it. I don't know what happened. I can't comment on that because I don't understand what the play is or didn't see a clip of it. So, that happens the odd time. It's pretty rare because usually people send me things, but this is one of those rare times where I have no idea, but I document it because I want to see how I compare to what's out there in real world. Parker Kelly, illegal check to the head. This one. Yeah, this was against the boards here. It was just really awkward more than anything. But to me, like, this head is avoidable. That's all we want is for people to avoid head contact when it's avoidable. That's the rule. That's the point of NHL's Rule 48. Avoidable head contact. Let's get rid of it. And when you watch the approach here, it's pretty violent impact for someone who's just gliding in. He's gliding in at pace. So any impact is going to be pretty hard. And then let's look here at the core. The core right there of his opponent is readily available. That opponent is standing up really tall. His head is leaned way out front, which you think you're going to blame him for getting his head hit because it's leaned out. But when you think about it, if his head is so far leaned out from his body, then if you hit his body, you should come nowhere near his head because his head is really nowhere near his body. And yet somehow this player, looking at this setup, hits nothing but head. He misses the body completely and just only goes through the head. So if you're doing that, it's pretty clear that you're doing something to target the head because the head is nowhere near the core of the body at that moment. So these are the things you have to get rid of. Now, they would have given him 2 games for an illegal check to the head. I would have given him 4. That's a lot closer. But to me, because he avoids the puck completely, doesn't really try and go stick on puck, and he stands up really tall into the hit, raises his shoulder. I mean, look how tall he is at contact here. That other player's, you know, his head's pretty high above the dasher, and yet somehow that shoulder is still square on it. He needs to be lower and try to get lower. So for me, that becomes, because he avoids the puck and does things like that, it becomes a non-hockey play as opposed to a hockey play under my definition. I can see how somebody would define this as a hockey play, a body check gone wrong. But under my system, you need to make some sort of attempt at the puck, or at least play the body in a way that makes it look like you're only doing it for a real hockey body positioning purpose. Whereas in this case, if you go in with your stick up off the ice and you're standing up tall and you push your shoulder up, to me, that's a little too much of a focus on the contact. And you're going to be more likely to do things wrong, like go up and hit someone in the head. So, if I was talking to Parker Kelly, I don't have the benefit of hearings, but if I did, I would ask him, show me the evidence. What's your evidence here that you were trying not to hit the head? It's not so much that I think he was going after the head, but really tell me the things you did, the steps you took to avoid the head here. And I don't think there's too many things that he did to avoid the head. It's just a very awkward, poorly timed, poorly positioned hit. So it's not the end of the world. It's not a big deal, but under my system, 4 games. Now, let's get to Matt Rempe. And by the way, if you guys want, while you're in here, if you send messages, I'll gladly answer them. I'm not used to doing a live show, so I forgot about the chat. I'm used to just doing these pre-recorded and then putting them out. But hey, we're here. You can ask me questions while we're going. That's fine. I would be more than happy to answer anything that you have to ask. Let's take a look at the Matt Rempe elbowing. We all remember this elbow on Jonas Siegenthaler. They suspended him for 4 games. I would have suspended him for 5. This is one of those ones where we're quite close. And to me, I get caught in the middle of these all the time, because I know there's some people that think this is the most egregious hit there ever was, and they want the book thrown at Rempe. And so for those people, 4 games that the league actually gave seems pretty low. They want 6 or more. And then the other people are saying, it was just an awkward hit gone wrong. So how is this 4? And in the current NHL context, under the current standard, I do find 4 games for this is a bit shocking, based on how I feel like it's just kind of a body check gone wrong. Now, having said that, I would have given him 5 games, but it's because my system regularly and consistently punishes players more than what the current one does, because this is clearly, as we talked about earlier, avoidable head contact. He has this player lined up perfectly. He's nice and low. He's in a glide, but then his opponent stops up and he panics or something. I don't know. I know they clip legs here and he goes all awkward, but that shrug, that raise is so needless, because he's so terrified of missing his check or hitting the boards. Some people think that he was just protecting himself from hitting the boards, and you know what? That could be true. But if you have put yourself in a situation where you're under that little control, that your opponent stopping up is enough to throw you that far off course and get you all that tangled up and put yourself in a position where you're going to slam into the boards, then you were doing something wrong in that hit anyway that needs to be fixed. But as it is to me, it's clearly an avoidable elbow raise, and it is directly to the heading, and there's no body contact here. It is all head. So those are the types of plays that we need to get rid of. So under my system, this goes in the 3 to 5 game suspension category, and I gave him the max 5 games because of the significant rise and the terrible angle of approach. But I agree. I'm glad the league actually gave 4. I mean, that's pretty harsh by their standards. And so, there's something to be said for that. Let's move to the Dmitry Kulikov illegal check to the head. Now, the league gave him, 2 games, I think? Let me look that clip up. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So the league gives him 2 games here, and this is one where it's just all about angle of approach. I mean, this player is clearly eligible for contact. no one is saying he should not check here. And I know that's where people go wrong to me is they say, what do you expect him to do? Not hit it all? And it's like, no, what I expect him to do is not rotate his body directly towards his opponent's head. Like that opponent is struggling to find the puck. He's looking down. This is a goal if you do this right. All he has to do is rotate his hips, bump that player off the puck, and dig for it. But instead, he glides completely away from the puck, doesn't even pretend to make a play on the puck, and changes his angle right there. When he realizes his opponent is vulnerable and that opponent is moving around and he's going to miss, he does the same thing Rempe does. He thinks he's going to miss, so he rotates his body. Now, the only reason I gave him 3 games is because I think he really does do different things. Like if this was a better angle of approach, this check would have been legal. Whereas for Rempe, you stick your elbow up like that. There was nothing ever going to be legal about that. But if you take the right angle of approach and go through the core here, this is a legal check all day. It's simply a poor angle of approach that goes through the head that causes this to be the problem. And that's a more easily correctable thing to me. So I gave him the minimum of that 3 to 5 game suspension category, 3 games. Tom Wilson. The Tom Wilson high stick. Boy, do I have a lot of thoughts on this. Again, this is one of those ones where I'm caught in the middle because there's so many people that think this is the most ridiculous, dangerous thing they've ever seen. And of course, it's a terrible thing. It's, again, easily avoidable, and it's pretty destructive. Like to swing your stick with one hand and drive him in the face. If you think this is intentional, if you think this was his goal all along, then absolutely, I would have thrown the book at him. I just don't think that his entire goal was to take a one-handed swing and knock someone's teeth out. I think he was trying to swing at a player, and it's the wrong choice. But there's a lot of nuances into this play that, they're tangled up. He's leaned backwards a little, knocked off balance at the last second. The Leafs player does hit him in the chest with his own stick too, right there before the swing. We get a better look at it from the front here, where the Leafs player actually hits him right there as Tom Wilson is already winding up. That stick hits him in the face and pops his head back. And I think that's what changes the trajectory of this stick, to be honest. Now, again, without the benefit of a hearing, I'd love to ask him and see what he was actually trying to do. But I think he's trying to swing low, and then as his head pops up, it changes the trajectory of that stick up into the teeth. So that's why I gave him 6 games, which is the minimum of that category. But at the same time, the fact that he was trying to swing at him at all is enough to punish for me. So my 6 games comes from, it's the same as the league, which is hilarious. We gave the same, but mine comes from the angle that this wasn't that intentional. It was just an accidental high stick to the face in terms of, I don't think his target was the face. It wasn't an accidental stick swing, which is why I put it into a play that has nothing to do with hockey, 6 to 10 game suspension category. But at the same time, for the actual NHL, under today's standards, to give him 6 games, they must have felt there was a lot of intent there. And I know his history would come into play and all that. And keep in mind, my 6 games doesn't allow for history. I will get to history, player history, in a couple of videos coming up here. But when I used to try and do this, when I first started a couple of years ago, I would put videos out and I would say I would suspend a person for an incident. And then I would say, and because they were a repeat offender, I would suspend more and more just to show how my scale worked. But it got confusing to people who don't know my system because they weren't real world repeat offenders. They were only repeat offenders in the tough call world. So when I called them repeat offenders, it was too confusing for people to understand. So I don't do repeat offenders in my videos. So my 6 games is a player who didn't necessarily mean to have the outcome he had and with no history. So if he had history, I would have given him more. Whereas the actual NHL Department of Player Safety, their 6 games would involve some sort of history. And I think they thought there was a little more intent than I did. But ultimately, we ended up in the same spot. I don't know if that's good or bad. Let's see here. So Bowen Byram suspended he was fined for interference. I would have suspended him. And I'm still talking to people about this on my YouTube. Just as late as 5 minutes before we went on air, there's comments on my video on my YouTube channel for this. By the way, I have my own YouTube channel. I know you're on the Heavy Hockey Network right now, which I'm part of the Heavy Hockey Network, but I have my own YouTube channel where I put all these incidents, all the little videos and clips that you're seeing right now are on my own YouTube channel, Tough Call at YouTube. So I would appreciate if you would go over there and subscribe at some point this evening. But I appreciate that you're watching me on this network. And I do articles for Heavy Hockey and videos every now and again for their channel, and we'll continue to do so. And this show will continue to appear on the Heavy Hockey Network. So you'll find this show here. But if you want to see all the incidents that I've done and all my little evaluations of them, and I have clean checks too, because the whole point of this for me is to clean the game up so that we see more checking. I don't want to see less. I don't want to punish every body check, believe it or not. There's plenty of body checks that happen in this league that I particularly love, and so I have a playlist called Clean Checks, which is apparently what everybody wants to see, although those get significantly less views than the train wrecks that I'm showing you right now, I gotta say. But I love a good, clean body check, and I want to see more body checking. And I feel like if we force players to do things the right way, we're going to see more of that. If we can get them to keep their arms down and stop launching into hits and stop hitting from behind, taking proper angles, using proper body position. For instance, that Kulikov hit could have been clean. I would have loved to have seen a nice, hard, clean check there, but instead he went through the head. Avoidable. Unnecessary. Let's make them do clean body checks so we can see more good clean body checks. It would be awesome. This is an example of a check that would probably be clean in any other situation, except for the puck was gone about an hour and a half before the hit happened. That's the only problem. Other than that, it's a pretty darn clean check. But if you're going to hit someone so late, you better soften it up. To me, if he'd just held his position here and let Crookshank glide into him, if this had just been an incidental collision, whatever. But where it gets me is that he lowers up and pops that shoulder out. We're going to see it better here in slow-mo. He bends, turns, and pops right there. There's no need of that. If he'd have just let him run into him, no issue at all. But this is needlessly excessive force for the situation, for how late it is and for how avoidable it is. So they did fine him $5,000 for interference, which I thought was great. It was important for me that the real world NHL acknowledged this as a dangerous and unnecessary hit. On my system, it's in the 3 to 5 game suspension category, and it's 4 games. So really, I think that $5,000 for interference and the 4 games are probably pretty on par. Now, kneeing is something that I don't take too kindly to, but it's also a very difficult penalty to call because knee-on-knee contact, there's the potential for knee-on-knee contact in regular body checking quite a bit, really. But when a player really sticks their leg out, that's where it gets me. That's where you really have to throw the hammer down. And look how far out his leg is because he's going to miss his check. This is another one of those things players do when they're going to miss. They don't like to miss. They don't want to get beat. They feel like they have to get any piece at all. And sometimes they just reach out with whatever body part is closest. It's not like he wants to go knee on knee. It's not like he's malicious, but you just reach out with whatever body part is closest. And in this case, it happens to be the leg. Now, what I mean by knee-on-knee contact being possible or likely in regular body contact is that really, if you look at it, all McMahon is doing is turning his body, rotating it to the side to deliver body contact. So in that sense, if he just goes through the body here, the knees are going to hit first, but the bodies will then absorb the contact, and then the knees won't follow through each other. So the danger is taken away. But because there's no body contact to soften the knee-on-knee contact, that's all it is leg-on-leg contact. And that leg really twists. And he just can't stick it out that far. He has to do better at angle of approach and timing this check. And you can blame all you want the player that tries to avoid the check, but it's still, the onus is still on the player delivering the check to keep that leg in and avoid that knee-on-knee contact. And that leg is just stuck out a little too far for my liking. Now, kneeing is very dangerous. The potential for injury with a knee The catastrophic nature of those injuries is why this goes in a higher category, even for a minor kneeing penalty, because kneeing is a super dangerous thing to do. So the risks involved are greater than with a normal body check. So that's why I gave this 7 games, because it automatically goes in the 6 to 10 game suspension category. Much like a cross check to the head, I feel like a knee is pretty needless and avoidable. So I want to get that out of the game as much as possible because the danger is so high. This one here, I was hesitant to look. I looked at this one. It's a cross check to the back, and I did watch this live, and I thought, well, that seemed pretty aggressive, right? And I still feel that way, but at the same time, I can see how this is just a routine reaction, a routine hockey play, because you just don't want to let that person go to the net. But I just thought it was overly aggressive to drive the stick into the lower back, into the pants, and intentionally knock this player off balance, only because of the location on the ice. If this had happened anywhere else, then, it's just a minor penalty. But because they're going so fast, and the result of this is that player is going to slide dangerously into the boards, that's where I think you have to really change your mindset about how aggressive you're going to be. I mean, look how low he gets. Look how much force and strength he's using to knock this player off balance. I mean, he goes right down on his knees basically and drives down in the back. That is super dangerous. In a world where people wanted, I can't remember, a Blues player suspended, thrown out of the league because he accidentally barely touched Cale Makar's back and slid him into the boards and crashed him heavily into the boards. In that kind of world, this doesn't even get looked at. That's shocking to me. That's super aggressive. So I would have given him 3 games. I know maybe that seems harsh, but it's when you look at the standard, it's consistent with other things that I've seen. Here's another illegal check to the head. Josh Manson. Where is it? Boom. Now, this to me, I know people thought that Miller was faking this and selling it, and that's fine. But look at the position he's in. We want players to protect themselves. What do you expect him to do here? He's pressed up against the board so that he won't get hit from behind. He's basically pinning himself and giving himself up and saying, you know what, hit me, and then we'll get into a puck battle. That's all he wants. And what does Manson do? He rotates to give him a kind of side check, and he sticks his elbow up head height and sticks. He could easily have just hit hip to hip, pinned the guy, which he actually tries to do, but he goes too far with the arm, and there's too much pace and too little control. So that's why I felt like this needed punishment, but I only gave it 3 games because he is trying to do the right thing, rotate and go hip to hip like that. But the upper body, there's too much force on the head, and it drives it into the glass in an avoidable way. If he had gone and done the same thing with less force, there's no issue here. So he just has to be mindful of that. He basically launches in. When you watch his feet, he basically launches into this contact. So, and not by launch, I don't mean jump. I just mean his feet actually do leave the ice, and whatever momentum he had going into that corner contributed to the violence of the check. So I think he just could have done better there. And if we just get rid of those little headshots like that, he could have pinned him. There could have been a lot of body contact here, a lot of body contact specifically, I want to emphasize. And it would have been fine. We would have had a nice battle. And instead, there's a potential head injury for something that's so easily fixable. And these players, I know people think I'm going too hard on them, but these players are supposed to be the best players in the entire world at everything. So why not ask them to be the best players in the world at body checking as well? It's not too much to ask for them to stay just a little bit lower, stay a little more in control, and finish the body checks with better angles of approach. They're supposed to be the best at everything. Now, this is the Charlie McAvoy play. And I went back and forth on this and back and forth on this and back and forth on this. Because really, it's just a race to the puck, and he's just trying to box his player out. But at the same time, it's pretty much interference. The way he steps in and chews his body over puck. And I know it's kind of the one player's reaching for the puck and one player isn't, and it is what it is. And he makes contact with the puck, so it's not really interference. But that's why I called it illegal check to the head, because what McAvoy does is pop over and up into a path that goes through the head. That pop up right there on the follow through is what makes head contact to me. Now, sometimes I do look at plays, and maybe I'll look at them in a month and go, you know what? Based on the scale, I probably wouldn't have done this. So I am watching this, in hindsight, even on my own punishments, and saying, is this really necessary 3 games? But if you look at some of the things that I have on my channel and some of the other illegal check to the head penalties, it is a little bit consistent. I just may have chosen a fine here instead of a 3-game suspension. I would look at that and rewatch it. So there are times where I do look at it and say, was it really that bad? But for the most part, I stand by what I do. Ryan Lomberg charging. Now, this is the kind of stuff that drives me nuts, because why do players want to do, first of all, flying? Let's see. Oh, this is the knee. I was thinking of his elbow. We're going to do an elbow here in a minute by him. But this is, again, another knee where he reaches out. Look how far out that leg goes. I mean, let's just watch here. This is a great example of what I'm saying about knee-on-knee contact, potential for normal body checks, because this is actually a pretty good, the shoulders are lined up, both players are super low, and their knees are in control for what you would want for a real body check. The leg goes out a lot after contact. It does go out some during contact, but it goes out mostly after because of the impact, and the leg is forced out via impact. But I think this is avoidable contact. So I have 3 games here. I don't know why it says charging. I can't really remember. It was a while ago. So, but I would say kneeing is what I would say. And it's only 3 games instead of 6, though, because I really feel like he was just trying to make a legitimate body check, but he just took a poor angle of approach to create that leg on leg contact, as opposed to really sticking his leg out ferociously and super recklessly. It was only a little bit reckless, so it gets a smaller suspension. This is the elbow I thought I was doing a second ago. And it's the same player, of course. That's the charge. That's the charge. This is the elbow. Sorry, I was looking through my video files. This is the elbow. When a player goes to check someone and then they jump and reach out with their arms because he was going to miss. Now, this is the only video clip I could find of it, so I know it's not the highest quality, but jump and swing the arm around and reach. First of all, jumping into a hit is illegal. I don't know why players think that they can do anything they want if they do it facing backwards. Players like to hit with their backside and their butts all the time. He jumps, rotates, and loses all control, and then when he's going to miss, he swings his right arm out and clips him in the head. There's so many things there that he should have done differently. This is so avoidable. You don't leave your feet. You don't raise your arm up to head height and blindly throw it back behind you. What do you expect to be the outcome other than head contact? It's just such a controllable situation. So that's why I give him 5 games. A non-hockey play that isn't malicious, but in the high end of that category. 5 games. And to show you a little bit of consistency, same week, Jesperi Kotkaniemi did pretty much the exact same thing. He leaps turns around and swings the same arm and everything. Jump, rotate, arm twist. And here's it a little slower so you can see. Rotate, jump, and swing back to make sure you get a piece. What part of this is being taught in checking clinics? What part of this is a legal body check? There's no attempt at core-to-core contact there. He's going to miss, so he rotates, jumps, and swings his arm back. That's so reckless and stupid. So again, I give him 5 games. That's consistent with, you'll see a lot of those types of plays on my channel because it happens more than you'd think. Now, I am going to get into how I deal with repeat offenders here. So Kotkaniemi is a repeat offender. This video is on my, if you want to hear the whole explanation, it's on my YouTube channel, Tough Call. But essentially, I'm just showing you that Kotkaniemi, this is the one that we just did. And it's not his first time throwing body checks like that. Here's one in the playoffs where he rotated and swung his left arm out and clipped a player in the face. This is last year's playoffs. Pretty much the same thing. They called this roughing because he hit his glove, but how does he know he's not going to hit him with his elbow here? He doesn't know that. He's just swinging his arm blindly. He has no idea where his opponent's head is at all. He just wants to catch any piece. So because it was his glove, they're going to call it roughing instead of elbowing, even though it's the action, not the result you should punish. To me, that is the same dangerous action that just happened before. So, of course, when I saw it again, I would give him more for this because he's done it before. So, especially if you can start to document patterns in players, I think that's important. Here's another, to me, repeat offender is Matt Rempe. Under my system, he would have been a repeat offender. Again, this video, if you want to hear the dialogue and the explanation as you go, but to me, we covered this elbow on Jonas Siegenthaler earlier, but to me, this is not his first dangerous play. I think he's been lucky, and they've been trying to cut him some slack because it's been really exciting for him to be in the league. But to me, this first hit should have been, this is a match penalty. Right? It's called a match penalty in the game, and they did nothing about it after the fact. To me, this is a charging. Like, it's avoidable head contact. And I have a video on this particular incident itself explaining that. But this is avoidable head contact to me. He extends out too far, leans his arm out, and drives through the head when body contact wasn't an option. And to me, this one on Lyubushkin was a charge. Look at all the steps he takes, and then he launches into that contact and goes up into the head. He was lucky, in my opinion, to get away with those other two. So I was not surprised at all when I saw him do this. Completely reckless play because he just got used to doing that, and he got away with it a couple of times. So why not keep doing it? It's that hit at all costs mentality, even when the hit isn't there or the player is vulnerable and you just don't have it lined up right. Players continue to force these hits, which is why those Lomberg elbows and those Kotkaniemi elbows and things like that, the kneeings we looked at, all of those things are avoidable. And it's just to get a hit in when you're not sure you're going to be able to anymore. You can't force contact when it's no longer there. And we have to ask players to stop doing that. And Matt Rempe is one of those players we have to ask to stop doing that. There was a couple of incidents I'm going to look at that actually weren't that bad. To prove that I don't want to suspend every hit, here's an example. This is a Tenorti hit. And to me, like, I'm big on boardings and hittings from behind. I think they're not strict on those at all. But to me, this is the player that put himself in a vulnerable situation and gave the player delivering the check no options. He just stopped up too suddenly and basically turned into it. The player going in has a stick on the ice. He's clearly puck focused, going stick on puck, and proving to me that it's this is what I would call a hockey play. Because it's stick on puck, it's puck focused, it's body position focused, not just hitting for the sake of hitting. And that player just stops up and surprises him. And what is he going to do? And he actually does a good job of softening the contact and avoiding it and making it as as light or soft as possible under the circumstances. Now, he did get a 2-minute minor penalty for boarding, which I think is unfortunate. But to me, there's just not enough force, and the puck carrier turned into it. So I don't think this should have even been a penalty, and definitely not a suspension. So this is what I look at. Now, actually, I'm gonna stop that right there, and we're gonna move into another segment. So those are all the ones that I would have suspended. Those are the ones that the league suspended that I would have compared how I compared to those, and then the ones that I would have suspended on top of that. So those are all 13 suspensions that I would have given, and an incident there that was borderline that I wouldn't have given a suspension to. And there is another one of those coming up, and it's a Brad Marchand incident. So that is what is going to be known as my incident of the week. And the incident of the week, as I said, is the Brad Marchand hit on Matthew Nyes. And boy, I've done some videos on Marchand in the past. Incidents that people think really were dangerous. For instance, that one with Liljegren where they went into the boards, or was it Riley? Maybe it was Riley. Yeah. They crashed into the boards, and people wanted Marchand thrown out of the league, and it was super dangerous. And to me, it was just accidental. This one here, same thing. People saw this and they were like, "This is deliberate knee-on-knee contact." This video is the video that's on my YouTube channel. Again, my explanation video. And sometimes I pause the video and I'm talking in the video, so I don't really know when it's going to play. But you could see this collision here. They're both trying to get around the Bruins defender, and then they slam into each other. And of course, people think Marchand jumped up and launched into contact, deliberately hit the head, tried to hit a knee, lifted his knee up and drove it into Nyes. It's obviously deliberate. It's obviously the worst thing that ever happened, and he needs to be kicked out of the league. But I don't think so. I think this was an accidental collision, and I'm looking at both players who do the same thing. If you watch the players, they're like a mirror image of each other. It's like a bird that sees a reflection of a bird in the glass, and then it just flies into it and can't avoid it. That's what's going on here. They both do the exact same thing. They both turn to the same lane. They see a defender in the way, so they both pick up the leg closest to that defender and try and go around that defender. So Nyes picks his right leg up. Marchand picks his left leg up. They're mirroring each other, and then they are both on one leg and glide into the same space. There's no malintent here. It's just one guy at the very last second was able to be a little bit stronger than the other guy. And it's just in how they glided. But they are actually doing exactly the same thing, getting to the same spot at the same time. It's not Marchand launching and trying to injure an opponent. If anything, Nyes would have had the best view of this, in my opinion, because look where he's coming from. Marchand is tracking that puck to the corner. He's focused on that other Leaf player that's taking the puck down the wall. Nyes was at the top of the blue line and could see the entire ice the whole way in. So if anything, he should have seen, in my opinion, what was coming before Marchand did. So to say Marchand saw him, realized he was vulnerable, and had all this time to get ready and take advantage of it, I just don't see that being the case. And like I said, if you look at their actions, they are literally doing the exact same thing, mirror image, and ending up at the same spot at the same time. So if you're going to accuse Marchand of doing things maliciously there, then I think you have no choice but to accuse Nyes of doing the same thing, because their actions are equal and opposite. So that's my take on that. And I know I had a lot of people comment on my channel on that video. There must have been hundreds of comments on that YouTube video of people saying that Marchand should have been kicked out of the league. And I just don't see it. And with that, so that's going to bring us to our by request. And the by request comes from Twitter follower at RabID, Dr. Denor Bloom, a Twitter follower that has tagged me in quite a lot of things lately, actually, and I very much appreciate it. So anytime you guys tag me stuff, it's very helpful. I see some comments in the chat. That's good. Sorry, I'm not used to doing a live show, so I forgot to look at them as I was going. But yeah, all of that's true. We want to get rid of avoidable plays. We don't want to throw our arms up, and we certainly can stay lower and do things smartly and make the adjustments. That's what we want people to do. The Matthew Tkachuk hit. I got to say, I appreciate the audience has been building this whole show, and it's getting bigger as I go. And the people that were here at the start are obviously staying. So I really appreciate that. And I thank you for the support. And, if you are liking what you see, then by all means, tell your friends next time and have them come on too. It's a lot of fun to do this in front of people when I know people. I've had a lot of support on my YouTube channel. I have over 4,300 subscribers there myself. And to be part of the Heavy Hockey Network has just been a blast. I look forward to interacting with the audience a lot more. So I'm having a lot of fun here, and I appreciate you staying with me. This is that Matthew Tkachuk awkward hit. I wish I'd had time to do a video of Matthew Tkachuk and his butt checks. I have clips sitting there waiting to go. I'm going to make a video based on this incident because people are looking at this and wondering, like, what was he thinking? He's going backwards into a player, and then he lifts his skate up and drives it backwards. What could possibly this player be thinking in this situation? But if you know Matthew Tkachuk, other than the leg kickback, this is how he hits. He thinks this is a legal, proper body check. And I said that players have a tendency to rotate and hit with their butts, and they think they can do anything. Matthew Tkachuk is the poster boy for that. There are videos all over my YouTube channel labeled Matthew Tkachuk butt check, Matthew Tkachuk flying butt check, Matthew Tkachuk patented butt check, because this is all he does. Butt check, butt check, butt check. He does not look a player in the eye, square up, and hit them shoulder to shoulder. Very rarely, if ever. He always goes in and uses his backside. So to me, this is his version, like I said, of a player who thinks he's going to miss a check and he throws a body part out. I haven't had a chance to actually review this one officially and give an official suspension, but it was a by request. Someone sent it to me, and it's one of those ones that's been sitting there like that I'm not entirely sure what to do with, to be perfectly honest, because when you look at what normal players do, this is really far out of the realm of what you would normally see. But for Matthew Tkachuk, this is standard issue stuff. And so to me, that's like a good reason to go hard on him, because no one else in the known universe would do this, especially with the skate. That when you get the skate involved, it's super, super dangerous. But if you look at his technique, it's really just a Matthew Tkachuk check gone wrong. So I honestly, I'll take suggestions. I honestly don't know what to do with that one, to be perfectly honest. I haven't had a real chance to take a good look at it and figure out what I would do, because it's just so bizarre. But like I said, for Matthew Tkachuk, it's really not that bizarre. I'm just looking at my notes here. So if you want to put suggestions of what to do with that, or get on my video on my YouTube channel and comment with what you would do. I'm all ears, because that's just an odd one. I hope I don't see too many of those again. I'm going to take this video off, and I'm just going to talk for a brief second about Zach Hyman. Now, I wrote an article for Heavy Hockey Network about how Hyman's character and work ethic is the driving force behind his success. That's the title of the article if you want to go look it up at heavyhockey.com. There's a lot of great articles there, including mine. And I also put a video on the Heavy Hockey Network channel that's featured in the article. If you click to the article, you'll find the video that Zach Hyman has made the most of his opportunities. And of course, this comes from the Andrew Berkshire video saying that Zach Hyman, he's privileged. He had a lot of help, and he sure did. I mean, not many people have parents that can buy a whole hockey league and put you in it, right? But there comes a time, as I said, I just want to cover this again, where there comes a time where everyone's at the same playing field. Like basically everybody who gets to the level that Zach Hyman got to has the same advantages as far as not necessarily financial help. Some people had to pay their own way. Some people had to, struggle to get there or make more sacrifice, but ultimately they would have had similar training is what I mean. The same advantages as far as eventually you would have been exposed to similar training. Eventually you would have been exposed to, superior coaches. You would have had the opportunity to travel quite a bit. It doesn't matter who paid for it or how you got there. You're still having the same benefits, the same types of trainings, the same preparation to get where you are. So at some point, you have to separate yourself from the pack by doing the right things. And that's what Zach Hyman does. He does the right things. If I was going to model myself right now, if someone paid my way and somehow bought me a pro tryout right now, I'm not scoring 50 goals in the NHL. I don't care how easy it was for me to get there. It's just not going to happen. I always say you could give me all the steroids in the world too, and I'm not hitting a major league home run, let alone however many of those guys hit. I'm not hitting one. You could give me all the advantage in the world, and I'm still not going to be able to physically do it because I suck at batting. I just don't have the mechanics. I can't do it. So no matter how many opportunities you have bought and paid for you still have to make the most of them. And it doesn't help that it doesn't help Andrew Berkshire's case that Zach Hyman gets awards for being a good student and for being a role model citizen and all the other things that have nothing to do with, that kind of advantage. And actually, the stereotype would imply that someone who is that spoiled and had that many advantages or whatever wouldn't have that kind of character, that they would be sort of above everybody and wouldn't work hard because they don't have to. Whereas he absolutely works harder than anyone else and goes to the dirty areas. So, there's only been less than 100 people that have ever played in the NHL. Think of all the players that have had, a pretty good ride and had parents helping them along the way and all that. Less than 100 players have ever had 50 goals in a single season. So I think that should speak for itself in terms of what Zach Hyman's been able to accomplish being where he's at. So that's just something I wanted to talk about. And then this is the very last segment of the night, which works out pretty well because we're just getting to our hour now. And I wanted to try and keep it within an hour. So this is the last segment that I call Here's the Thing. And it's just where I pick a topic and I talk about it. And my topic tonight is going to be head shots versus head contact. And actually, I usually show clean checks because I love clean checks. I usually show a clean check of the week, and I almost forgot, but this ties in really nicely here. There's a check here by Andreas Englund. And I love this body check, and people are looking at this going, okay, there's quite a bit of head contact. How is this not an illegal check to the head? But when you think about the wording of that, illegal check to the head implies that this player that's delivering the check did something to direct the force of the contact specifically to the head. Whereas when you look at this player did nothing to target the head. They stayed nice and low. They put themselves in a great angle, a great body position, and great position on the ice to have the player with the puck skate directly into them. He held his posture through this check, through the entire process of the check. He doesn't really pop up or out at all in an excessive way, just very, very slightly to absorb the contact. And he drives core to core. This is an example of a legal check that involves head contact. It's not a head shot. You can have legal checks to the head by the definition of the rule. And that's the one thing I love that the NHL has done differently than, say, the IIHF or the CHL or NCAA. is in some of those rule books, the wording is head contact, not illegal check to the head. So the IIHF, of course, is of the opinion that there's no such thing as a legal check to the head. That's what they say. The wording matters to me because that's different than saying there's no such thing as legal head contact, whereas I think that's really what the IIHF stance is that any head contact should be called. And to me, that's punishing the result. The one thing I love that the NHL has really made sure to distinguish in their language is that they say illegal check to the head, which implies, of course, that there is legal checks to the head. Now, again, the wording there is a little bit off in that I don't think you can call it a legal check to the head, because if you do something that makes your check go to the head, then it becomes, to me, an illegal check to the head because you're targeting the head in some way. It's different than a hit that involves head contact. It's like a handball in soccer, for those of you that play that. If you're just standing there doing nothing to put your arm out and you're innocent and the ball just happens to strike you in the arm or the hand, that's different. That's ball to hand contact. But if you actually do something to reach out and invite the contact with your hand on the ball or target the ball with your hand in a way, then it becomes a handball. It's the same thing with head contact versus a head shot. You can hit a person who's vulnerable and low and their head is down, and you're going to make head contact no matter what you do, as long as you're trying to go through the core and you only hit the head as a result of delivering a body check to the body. It is what it is. You can't call all head contact. I think that's unfair because it punishes the wrong thing. If you call head contact a penalty, it punishes the result, not the action. Whereas what we really want to do is discourage people from doing things that promote head contact, that will actually target the head, their angle of approach, their timing, all the things that are in NHL Rule 48. Unnecessary extension of the body upward and outward is my favorite. So when it's there in the literature, the one thing that drives me crazy about the NHL is that they don't apply it consistently, because they allow players to jump into checks. And if players stick their elbow up, but they miss and they don't hit the head, if they hit the shoulder, then they don't call it anything at all. They're only looking for head contact. And in all these checks we see, for instance, that interference by Bo Byram, people are going to look at that check. I should pull that up again and just really lay this home. People are going to look at this and they're going to look specifically for, was there head contact here? That's going to be the deciding factor for them and whether they would call a penalty here or not. Is this head contact? Whereas really the problem is the extreme lateness and the excessive violence on a player that is not eligible to be checked at all. It has nothing to do with whether or not there was head contact. But a lot of people will look at that and say, well, he didn't even hit the head, so it's just a minor penalty. But I mean, he did things to me that would be more likely to result in head contact, especially where there's not even a legal check to be had there. Whereas England just let that player skate into him. It's the same thing with that Brendan Smith hit on Connor Bedard that broke Connor Bedard's jaw. But to me, it wasn't an illegal check to the head. It was a perfectly legal check that just resulted in head contact. So to me, that's where I draw the line. I differentiate between a head shot versus head contact. And I think that's really, like I said, the way the NHL has their rule written is the right way to go. It's how they apply it in real world inconsistently and don't follow their own guidelines as it's written in the rule book. That's where they lose me, because they don't even believe in their own system that way. There's too many things that they allow to happen that would lead to head contact. And that's what I want to try. I don't want to have a penalty for a legal check to the head. I think it's one of the worst things they could ever have in one sense, because it makes people only look at whether or not there was head contact. They don't look at things now that are dangerous and increase the likelihood of head contact, like leaving your feet and things like that. But under my system, the goal isn't just to punish head contact after it happens, which is what it seems to be in the NHL. My goal would be to prevent head contact before it takes place. I don't want people to get CTE. And ironically, CTE is a disease that you can only really find or be sure you have after you've passed away, when it's already too late to do anything about it. That's the same thing with punishing someone for an illegal check to the head. If you don't do anything to stop things that lead to head contact, like cross checks to the shoulder or cross checks to the upper neck and that sort of thing, if you're only waiting, it wasn't so bad, it was just to the shoulder, he tried to get him in the shoulder, it's fine, no big deal, right? If you allow that sort of thing to happen, and then all of a sudden you're only punishing things to the head, it's already too late. You have to punish the things that lead to head contact more appropriately, so that head contact never happens at all. That's where I'm at with it. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover in this show. I think, like I said, usually I try and keep up with this weekly, but it absolutely hasn't happened for a while. So it'll probably be 2 weeks before I do another one, maybe. But in the playoffs, once the playoffs start, I am going to try and do this a lot more, because a lot more things are going to happen and they're going to be a lot more time sensitive. So in the playoffs, I'll become a lot more active and on top of things. I appreciate you all sticking by for the entire hour. If you want to see more of my videos of any of the incidents I covered here, or any of the incidents that I covered in the past, go to Tough Call at YouTube. I'm on Twitter at Tough Call Pod, and I have a Facebook page as well. Of course, I'm part of the Heavy Hockey Network, so please make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel as well as mine. And have a good night. Thanks for listening.